That time Rimuru got a daughter. By Asora09. The teddy bear incident. Rimuru's perspective. A cruel view was displayed in front of my eyes. It was gruesome, there was really no other way to describe it. I was really hoping to find a different scene when I arrived, but that was just my wishful thinking. The ground was bathed in blood, the houses and buildings were engulfed in flame, the scent of ashes and burnt flesh filled the air. And yet, there was not a single soul present. Not only that, but there wasn't even a single body, which would be weird, considering the unreasonable amount of blood spilled everywhere. What happened here? Benimaru fell to his knees at the unexpected sight. It made sense. Even if he had seen how everybody was getting massacred, there was no way he wouldn't get bewildered if he came back and found literally nobody. I had already expected this ever since Benimaru arrived at our village and told us they had been attacked by the orcs. This might sound a bit too gruesome to hear, but I began to talk nervously. I obviously couldn't hide the information I knew forever. That said, it didn't make it any easier to say, at all. They were eaten. Benimaru turned up to look at me from where he was kneeling. What do you mean? The bodies. They were eaten. By the orcs. As I said this, Benimaru gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. Why do you know that? Benimaru stood up in a flash and grabbed me by the collar. There was an indescribable rage in his eyes. It was only natural, considering the situation. Are you in this together with those pigs? He began shaking me, my feet dangling around from the height difference as he held me up. Beside him, an ogre with white hair looked at us without interfering. He looked very old, and had a Japanese-styled sword at his waist. He was none other than Hakuro, who was tasked with Benimaru and the others' safety by the chief of the ogre village. He seemed calm on the outside, but his clenched fist and tight grip on his sword revealed his true feelings. He didn't interfere with Benimaru, who was shaking me down as if he was a thug back on Earth. Perhaps he also suspected I had something to do with this. There was another person, however, who did seem to want to intervene. It was Seal, who glared at Benimaru with scary eyes. That said, I can't allow this situation to complicate any further, so I sent Seal a quick admonishing glance to tell her to back down. She did, thankfully, but she was still glaring at Benimaru. The only difference was that she no longer appeared to be entering a battle stance. I am not. I replied simply to Benimaru. Then, why? His gaze was drawn to the ground, and his grip on my collar seemed to weaken, as my feet were gradually getting closer to the ground. An Orc Lord was born. I began the explanation. The Orc Lord has the special characteristic that allows those under his command to obtain properties of the enemies they defeat, by eating them. I sent someone from my village to investigate, and we were able to finef that out. After I said that, Benimaru finally lowered me to the ground and fell down to his knees. For now, let's head back and rest. There is nothing we can do here anymore, I said with a dejected voice. It was technically possible to alter this outcome with my skills, but revealing my overpowered and unreasonably unfair skills was not a good move, unless I wanted to catch the world's attention. I do feel bad for Benimaru and the ogres, but it is just too dangerous to reveal my hand like that to the enemy, and to the world. There are some things that are better off unknown. With that said, I backed away from Benimaru, giving a chance to Hakuro to approach him. They exchanged a few words I decided to ignore, and then Hakuro helped Benimaru stand up from his weakened position. Are you sure? Seal called out to me as I was about to prompt everyone to leave. Yeah. Revealing our hand right now would only call for unwanted attention and danger for Riley and us. I understand. Seal sounded weird, with her usual intonation. She seemed to read the mood and avoided using any of her usual quirks. Suddenly, it began raining. What a depressing night, to be honest. First luminous and now this, why can't they let us alone, I wonder. After that, we returned to the goblin village along with Benimaru and Hakuro. Hollow diamond, hollow diamond, hollow diamond. After we arrived, the depressed Benimaru was taken away by Hakuro to rest along with the rest of the ogre survivors. Seal and I, meanwhile, returned to our home and laid down on the bed side by side. Riley, who had been sleeping in her room in the imaginary space this entire time, got retrieved by Seal and was gently placed in between us. And we just stayed there. Seal and I both stared at the ceiling while being unable to sleep, just as we did in Dworgen. Seal. I began a conversation through thought communication. Yes, she replied. You know, up until tonight, I really hadn't realized just how much power we hold in our hands. Seal remained silent. Like, I knew we were strong and all that, but being strong and holding the authority that we do are two completely different things. Yeah, that's true. It is not as with Guy Crimson, who despite being very strong, holds no authority over this world. Seal seemed to understand what I was trying to say. Yeah, if we wanted to, we could quite literally change this world however we like. I answered back, sadly. It was possible to do so with the authority I got from Veldanava, and the several unreasonable skills I hold. You're thinking about what happened at the ogre village, right? Seal was able to understand where I was coming from. If I wanted to, I could make all of those ogres come back, because I have the power to do so. Seal said nothing, but even so, I didn't do anything. I clenched my fists under the bedsheets. What is the point of holding so much power, if I can't use it to help those that need it? You did nothing wrong, darling. Seal turned to look at me. You held back because you knew the consequences using those skills would bring. I know, but it's just too much to carry with such a responsibility. It is heavy, this amount of power and authority is just too big for a single individual to hold. Darling, if you are burdened by the power you have, then I will share that burden with you. If you decide to use that power, I will be there and carry the consequences of using it with you. If you decide to hold back from using it like earlier tonight, I will accept that guilt you hold and share it with you, because that is my job, as your wife. Seal took my hand in hers as she spoke. I see. That's why, it's okay to depend on me whenever you need it. You're not alone in this world. Thanks, Seal. You're welcome. Hollow diamond, hollow diamond, hollow diamond. The next morning, the first thing to do was to have a strategic meeting with Benimaru and the ogres. I have already mentioned this to the chief's son, but our enemy has an orc lord in its ranks. Currently, we were in one of the rooms in the goblin village. The people present in the room were, Seal, Rigard, and I, on one side, and Benimaru, Shion, Sue, Hikuro, Shuna, Kurobe, and some other ogres on the other. The ogres who had been seriously injured, which were everybody but Benimaru and Hikuro, were treated the previous night and now were in better condition. As I am sure many of you are aware from legends and tales, an orc lord is quite the formidable enemy, allowing those under his command to inherit abilities from the enemies they defeat. I said. The others were all paying attention. Considering how the ogre village has fallen, the strength of each individual orc in the army is not to be underestimated. I said, implying that the ogres' strength was taken in by the orcs. And so, we will have to think about how to proceed. I suggest we form an alliance to take on the orc army. That is the only way I can imagine us being able to win. With my strength I should be able to defeat them quite certainly, but there was no way I could say that. And we also need to gain the cooperation of the lizardmen in order to form the Jura Forest Alliance, so taking on the orc army solo was not a choice. And with that said, I propose you all temporarily become my subordinates. Some eyes opened wide at this declaration. I saw how Benimaru was about to object, so I quickly continued talking before he could. It would only be temporary, while we deal with the orcs. Once that's over, you are free to remain here with us, or go to another part of the forest to live, I don't mind. Benimaru, who was about to object, backed down and listened closely. After I was done, he spoke quietly. May I discuss this alone with my companions? Sure, take as much time as you like. Seal, Rigard, let's go. After that, all the members of the ogre village were left alone in the room after Seal, Rigard, and I left. Papa. Mama. Once outside, a cute little voice called out to Seal and I. It was really, of course, wearing quite the crazy bed hair and her pink pajamas that she had used last night. And she was talking in a tone of voice that didn't sound happy at all. She was also pouting, in fact. Really? Are you okay? I called out to her. HMPH. In response, she averted her face from me with all her might. Really? I was shocked to be honest. She looked really mad, for some reason. She still looks cute while pouting, though. Really is mad with you too. She said so as she pouted even more. Now even Seal was shocked. Honey. Seal nervously called out to Riley as she crouched to about her height. Riley just pouted even further and completely turned around from Seal. Wah, darling. Riley is being a meanie. Seal turned to look at me with tearful eyes. She looked really sad, I'm not gonna lie. Our Rayla-sama, any more than this, and Seal-sama might not be able to resist anymore. Rigurd seemed worried about the mental damage that Seal was taking. HMPH. Riley crossed her arms as she ignored Rigurd just like Seal. Kukuku, it seems it is my turn to show everyone how it's done. Riley, can you tell Papa what's going on? I said with the utmost confidence. Looking quite smug. PTTTTTT, the only thing I got from my sweet and beloved daughter was a tongue-out gesture as she tried to mock me. Ugh, this is too much for me to handle, she is rebelling against the authority. Now it was Seal and I who were on the ground powerlessly. Kuahahaha. What's going on here? Just as that happened, the storm dragon decided it was a good moment to make his appearance. Uncle Valora. She smiled and happily waved at Veldora. She is okay with him. Seal and I both shout in unison. Why is he okay with him and not with us? I am sure Seal was thinking the same thing. Or well, she probably added, worthless lizard, somewhere in the sentence, but not that it matters, anyway. I sent a glance at Veldora, and turned back at me and nodded, as if wanting to say, I understand, leave it to me. This is seriously starting to worry me. Really, what is going on What's up with your hair? Ha 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 ha. Veldora began his argument well enough, but halfway through, he noticed how Riley's HSIR was a complete and utter mess, and began laughing at her. It wasn't his usual laughter, but one that clearly showed he was having the time of his life. Quote. Too bad for him, Riley didn't share his opinion, and so began staring at Veldora with eyes. She perhaps thought that she had just gained an ally, only to be instantly betrayed. Life is cruel indeed, really. Our Raylichan. Veldora seemed to sense he had messed up somewhere, and so he started shaking and sweating heavily. Riley was looking at him with eyes as though she was seeing a troublesome bug. TCH, 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 TCH. Riley. Seal and I raised our voice at our daughter who had turned into a tongue-clicking machine. Quote. Excuse me. As we were having our small family quarrel, a voice called out to me from behind. I turned around, and saw Benimaru and the other ogres standing in a line. Before answering, I quickly sent Seal a glance. She glanced back at me and nodded, placing the operation, make Riley happy, effectively into action. It was something we had planned out just now and organized with a simple exchange of glances. It was something only people with a near-perfect level of coordination could do. In short, Seal would find out why Riley was mad, and later we would fix it together, as now I was busy with the ogres. Thus, Seal took Riley into her arms with a single movement, and entered the imaginary space together with her. Veldora also disappeared from the scene, perhaps he was also taken by Seal into the imaginary space. Cough cough, have you decided already? I stood up from where I was kneeling and addressed Benimaru and the others with perfect normality. They were looking at me with eyes, though, for some reason. Quote. Sure, we have decided that we would like to become your subordinates. Benimaru said as he bowed his head. Please allow us to serve under you from here onward, Rimuru-sama. He and the other ogres then kneeled on one knee in reverence. Great. Then, I will all bestow you with some names. I said. The ogres became noisy for a couple seconds in shock, but ultimately, I was able to name them. They had exactly the same names as in the original timeline, with the exception of the few others that weren't present in the main timeline. I also assigned each one of them with their own task, as I did in the main timeline as well. With this, the plans for the future and the establishment of Tempest was proceeding smoothly. That night, by the way, I had to spend a large amount of time petting and spoiling Riley before she was able to forgive me and Seal for leaving her alone in bed as we woke up early in the morning. I was always observing her with universal perception, but it seemed that wasn't enough and she felt lonely when she woke up without us in bed. The following days were peaceful, with a lot of training and strategy planning for the upcoming conflict. That was our routine until. Thank you for greeting me. I will give this village, too, the chance to submit to my rule and authority. I hope you will consider it an honor. Crap, I forgot about the arrogant lizard.